For generations, Christianity fundamentally shaped American public life, its tenets woven into the nation's moral fabric. Presidents regularly invoked biblical principles in major speeches, while churches actively mobilized communities, influencing electoral outcomes. Faith undeniably guided the moral debates that defined each era of American history. Yet, a profound reevaluation of faith's role in the public square is now underway. Church attendance has been steadily declining for decades, and the language employed by politicians is subtly shifting. Fewer Americans now agree on what role, if any, faith should play in public life. This documentary seeks to critically analyze this evolving landscape. Is Christianity genuinely losing its political influence, or is that influence merely transforming in ways we have yet to fully recognize and measure? The United States was never officially founded as a Christian nation. Its Constitution deliberately omits religious requirements for office, and the First Amendment explicitly establishes a separation of church and state. This foundational paradox, however, did not prevent Christianity from deeply influencing American culture, laws, and values from its very inception. From the abolitionist movement that ended slavery to the civil rights movement of the 1960s, and from the temperance movement to various social reform efforts, faith has consistently served as a powerful catalyst for major political movements throughout American history. Modern America, however, presents a starkly different picture than it did even 30 or 40 years ago. What specific factors are driving this significant shift? What aspects of Christianity's historical influence still persist, even if they are less overtly visible or institutionally recognized than before? This inquiry demands a careful, analytical approach to discern the nuances of this complex societal transformation. Early American thinking about fundamental concepts like human dignity, the inherent worth of every individual, was profoundly shaped by Christian ideas and values. This extended to moral responsibility, the belief that individuals and societies possess obligations beyond mere self-interest, and to the very frameworks of justice and law used to determine right from wrong and organize society. Psalm 33:12, "Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord," articulated a sentiment that deeply influenced how many early Americans understood their country's identity and providential purpose. Churches historically functioned as far more than just Sunday morning worship spaces. They were vital community centers, civic gathering places, and influential moral voices in both local and national debates. Crucially, America also embraced religious freedom from its inception, allowing belief without government enforcement. There was no state church, no religious tests for office, and freedom of conscience was protected by law. This established a persistent foundational tension. Was Christianity intended to guide politics directly through legislation and governance? Or was its role to influence society indirectly through transformed hearts and moral example? This fundamental debate has never been fully settled, continuing to shape contemporary discourse. The late 20th century, particularly from the 1970s and 80s, witnessed a dramatic surge in visible and organized Christian political activism. Churches actively mobilized voters on specific issues, and faith-based language became explicitly integrated into political campaigns. Moral issues such as abortion, prayer in schools, and traditional marriage became central to the voting calculus for many Americans. Religious voting blocs, particularly the evangelical and Catholic segments, wielded significant power in elections at every level. Politicians actively courted evangelical leaders and Catholic bishops, understanding that their endorsements could sway entire states and influence national outcomes. However, recent demographic and attitudinal surveys reveal dramatic shifts. Fewer Americans identify as Christian each year, representing millions who are disaffiliating or never joining churches. Younger voters, in particular, prioritize a different set of issues than previous generations, focusing on climate change, student debt, healthcare access, and racial justice. Furthermore, religious voting blocs that once exhibited strong cohesion are now splintering along lines of race, class, education, and generation. This compels us to ask, is Christianity losing political power primarily because fewer people adhere to the faith? Or is it losing unity because Christians themselves cannot agree on what their faith demands politically? These are distinct analytical problems with profoundly different implications for the future of religious influence. Older generations of Americans often forged a tight link between their faith and specific public policy positions. The conviction that something was sinful often translated directly into a mandate to legislate against it. If the Bible taught a principle, the law should reflect it. This connection felt natural and self-evident to many. Younger Americans, including younger Christians, however, frequently compartmentalize these domains. Personal belief guides their individual lives, institutional religion may or may not earn their trust, and government authority, they contend, should remain neutral on spiritual matters. Matthew 22:21, where Jesus states, "Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's," has been interpreted in wildly divergent ways throughout history. Does this generational shift signal an outright rejection of Christianity and its values? Or does it represent a return to a more personal, less politically focused faith, perhaps resembling early Christianity before it acquired institutional power? A critical question emerges. Can faith not only survive but thrive without formal political power? History suggests it can. Some of Christianity's most vibrant periods occurred precisely when it lacked governmental authority or cultural dominance. This analytical perspective challenges the assumption that political power is synonymous with spiritual vitality. We cannot ignore the broader societal context. Public trust in institutions across the board is dramatically declining in America. Trust in political systems, media, and corporations has eroded significantly. Concurrently, trust in religious institutions has also diminished compared to previous generations. High-profile scandals involving religious leaders, intense polarization within churches over political issues, and culture wars that have made churches appear more partisan than spiritual have collectively altered how many Americans perceive religious organizations. While some Americans still view churches primarily as moral guides offering wisdom for living good lives, an increasing number perceive them as merely another political interest group, indistinguishable from lobbying organizations or POCs. This raises a fundamental analytical question. Does active political involvement genuinely strengthen the church's voice and influence? Or does it paradoxically weaken its moral credibility by making it appear partisan and compromised? Once a religious institution becomes strongly identified with a particular political party or movement, roughly half the country may cease to listen to its moral pronouncements. This represents a significant strategic trade-off that warrants careful consideration by religious leaders and political observers alike. Even as Christianity's formal political influence appears to be declining, faith continues to shape American life in significant ways that often go unnoticed or unquantified. Christians still operate the majority of charitable organizations and nonprofits, providing essential community aid to vulnerable populations. They play a crucial role in shaping family life and transmitting values to the next generation. They lead countless volunteer movements that serve their communities in practical, tangible ways. Christian values and motivations are demonstrably driving immense amounts of social good across America, often without explicit religious branding. What is particularly interesting is how these Christian values frequently manifest without overtly Christian labels. Individuals motivated by their faith engage in good works without necessarily advertising the religious component. Matthew 5:16. Let your light shine before others suggests that this light often shines through actions rather than explicit declarations. Therefore, we must critically ask, how should influence be measured? Is it solely by the number of laws passed reflecting Christian positions? Or is it also by the number of lives transformed through service, compassion, and example? These distinct metrics yield very different pictures of Christianity's enduring role in America. It is crucial to note that in many parts of the world, Christianity is experiencing rapid growth, particularly in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. While its formal influence and raw numbers may be declining in Western countries like the United States and Europe, it is flourishing in other regions. History offers a vital lesson. Faith often thrives most robustly when it operates outside formal power structures. The early church experienced explosive growth under Roman persecution, and Christianity has flourished in numerous contexts precisely when it could not rely on government support or cultural dominance. So, Is American Christianity entering a quieter period, characterized by less overt visibility and political power? This seems probable, but is this necessarily a detrimental development? Or could it be entering a more personal, more authentic period where faith must prove its value through the lived experiences of believers rather than through political victories? Historical analysis suggests that such a trajectory might actually be healthier in the long run, even if it currently feels like a loss to those accustomed to Christianity's historical cultural dominance. This shift demands a reevaluation of what constitutes true influence and spiritual health. Let us conclude with some critical questions for both religious groups and political observers to wrestle with. Is Christianity truly losing influence in American politics in ways that should genuinely concern believers? Or is America simply redefining where faith belongs in public life, establishing clearer boundaries that might ultimately prove healthier for both church and state? Does possessing political power genuinely strengthen religious belief and assist churches in fulfilling their core mission? Or does it distract from spiritual purposes and compromise moral witness? And if churches were to strategically step back from overt political activism and cultural warfare, what profound purposes might they rediscover? What essential aspects of their mission might they prioritize that have been neglected in the pursuit of political influence? Christianity has survived the rise and fall of empires, revolutionary upheavals, and massive cultural transformations over 2 millennia. Its future in America likely does not hinge solely on election results or Supreme Court decisions. Rather, it depends on how believers choose to authentically live out their faith in daily life. There are no easy conclusions here, no simple answers to these complex, interwoven questions. Only important inquiries worth contemplating with intellectual honesty and analytical rigor. This is the Scholar's Ledger, where history, faith, and power are critically examined. Subscribe, share your perspective in the comments, and join us in the ongoing search for truth.